2x, and we're focusing on the 4x. Now, the smallest of the two is what? What's the smallest of the two? The negative 2. So, move the negative 2 over. Why am I moving the negative 2 over? Because it's the smallest. Well, Hubert, I don't want to do that. I wasn't taught to do that. I was taught to move the 4x over because Jody and Susie cannot switch sides on the seesaw. Well, that's not the way I teach it. And if you do it that way, that's fine. But when we get to inequalities and you screw up, don't raise your hand because you're not doing what I tell you. All right, so 3 is equal to 4x, what? What does that do when it comes across the river? It becomes a 2x. And that gives me 3 is equal to 6x minus 2. Now we have our 6x together. 2 goes where? Across the river, that becomes a what? Positive 2. 5 is equal to 6x. Now what? 5, 6 is equal to x. Now, like I said last week, I can hear the people that didn't do it that way. I can hear them right now. Well, I got that same answer, so it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. But that's not why I'm teaching you to keep the variable positive. I'm teaching you to keep the variable positive so when we get to inequalities, you don't have to remember 2 more rules. And that is 6.7, I believe. 6.6 or 6.7, one of those sections. All right? So let's try one more. And after this one, we'll move on to the distributive law. Because right now we're just doing multi-step. We're just doing 2 or 3 steps. Nothing fancy. Now, which one's the smallest bucket? The 2x. So you're going to move it over. And that becomes a x. 7 comes over, it becomes a positive 7. So x is equal to what? 4. And not a lot of people have problems with these. The only problem that people have with these type problems is the negative. And if there's a negative out front, they either forget to multiply through by negative or divide by negative, or they just do it and they don't even think about it. And then again, when we get to inequalities, they just do it and don't think about it, and they don't do the next step, which means they have to flip the inequality, and then they get mad when they get it wrong. So let's go to the distributive law. Before I go to the distributive law, let me just reiterate what we've gone over so far. First, we went over order of operations. Second of all, we went over one-step equations. The one-step equations was x plus 4 is equal to 2, x minus 4 is equal to 6, 2x is equal to 8, and x over 3 is equal to 7. And I think I gave y'all 4. Then 3 two-step equations. The two-step or multi-step equations example of 2x plus 4 is equal to 7. I think that was one of the first ones we did. And then we moved to do two sides at one time. So that's what we've covered so far. Distributive law is number 4. Now, distributive law, here's an example of one. This is a very basic distributive law. Always remember the distributive law is kind of like a block of cement. I mean, if you're working with concrete, and I usually show this in a pre-algebra class, but y'all have had pre-algebra, and you're working with a block. I mean, you're pouring some concrete into a block. Let's say you live in a subdivision where you can't dig and you want to put a mailbox up, and you can't dig into the ground because you might kill some kind of worm or something. So you have to do a cement block here and then put your mailbox up, so and so. So you make a 1 foot by 1 foot by 2 foot form of a block with plywood, and you pour concrete into that thing, and you put your post up like so you can put your mailbox up. I don't know how to draw, but anyway, looks something like that. Thing will be flag. Alright, so you got a block right here, and you pour that concrete in there, and while you pour that concrete in there, your ring falls off, and you don't notice it because you're a guy, you just don't notice things like that, and you've got that ring in there. Well, how's the only way? What happens to the concrete? It cures. In other words, it gets like concrete. How's the only way to get the ring out of the concrete block? A VA hammer, right? Take a hammer and just start chipping away at it. So your goal is to get the ring. Obstacle is what? Concrete block. The tool that you're going to use is a VA hammer. And you're going to break that concrete away until you get the ring out. What the heck does that have to do with this? Well, here's your ring. This is your concrete block. And where's my hammer? There's your hammer. You're going to take that hammer, and you're going to break that concrete block up with the distributive law. And what's 2 times X? And what's 2 times 3? And there is your equation, and that's number 1, 2, and 3. We did right here, or 1 and 2 right here. The distributive law is just a tool to get the first 2 type equations. So how do you get rid of a positive 6? Take it across the river, and it becomes a minus 6. 2x is equal to what? 1. X is equal to 1/2. Now that's a real, on a scale from 1 to 10, that's about a 1. It's real simple. So distribute the 2. Just remember, whenever you see these parentheses, that's a concrete block. And you're not going to be able to do anything with a concrete block unless you bust it up. Period. You can't do anything with it. You can't take the 3 away. You could divide by 2, but that would give you a what on the right-hand side? fraction, 7/2. And if you like whips and chains, knock yourself out. Work that fraction all you want to. But why? All right, let's do a nerd. 3 times x minus 2 plus 7. Now I better wait. Is equal to 5 times x minus 2. All right, work with that one. You got 2 cement block or concrete blocks up there. So that means you got to bust both of them up. So you got a number 3 hammer and you got a number 5 hammer. And what do we have on the left-hand side? 3x minus 6 is equal to what? 5x minus 10. Which ones are big or smallest bucket? 3. So I'm going to move it over. Becomes minus 3x. Negative 6 is equal to 2x minus 10. At negative 10 comes across the river. And 10 minus 6 is 4. X is equal to 2. So everybody should have got x is equal to 2. All right, now we've got, I can add a couple more things to it and it become a multi-step equation with distributive law. Right now it's just distributive law. You do distributive law and then you have a couple of steps and then you get the answer. But I could add a few more things to it and it become a multi-step with distributive. So let's go ahead and take this type problem, and I was going to copy it over, but I'll just make another one up. 2 times x minus, well, let's do this. 2 times 3x minus 7 plus 2 is equal to 3 times negative 2x minus 7 plus 4. Okay, now if you take these two things off right here, cover that up, and cover that up, you have the same problem we just did, right? Okay, so now start it. Or you could throw your pencil down and quit. That would be a good thing to do. That'd be the easiest thing to do. Or you could erase the positive 2 and positive 4. You could do that. Just say it didn't exist. Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is distribute because you can't do anything really. Now you could move that negative, that positive 2 over there and it'd be 2, but that's not going to help you any. So you might as well just go ahead and bust up the blocks. Now in algebra, usually after you use the distributive law, unless it's a real basic problem, after you use the distributive law, you always do what next?
Add like
combine like terms or add like terms. CLT. Combine like terms. That's usually what you do after you use the distributive law in algebra. So that would be 6x minus what? 14 plus 2 is equal to negative 6x minus what? Okay, now at this point, we're going to combine like terms because that's what you do after you do the distributive law. So, negative 14 plus 2. You owe $14, you have 2. What's the outcome? You still owe 12. Negative 6x. You owe $21, you have 4, you owe. And now you have the problem we just did, or the same type problem we just did in the previous screen. Which one's the smallest bucket? You bring it over. And that becomes a positive 6x. 12x minus 12 is equal to negative 17. And what do we do with that negative 12? Comes across the river. So 12x is equal to, you owe 17, you have 12, you owe 5, right? Yep. So x is equal to negative 5/12. Do you notice anything about the way that I do these type problems? Anybody want to give any input on how I do them? How I show them to y'all? How do I show it? In order, yes. And I do not what? What do I not do while I'm showing you how to do these problems? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Useless bullcrap?
What?
Useless bullcrap?
No. How about I do not skip what? Steps. Okay? Some of y'all, let me show you what y'all do, especially the guys. Here's your blue notebook paper marks right here. Okay? 2x plus 4 is equal to 3x minus 6. X is equal to 5. That's what y'all try to do. You try to do it in your head. Okay? And your mathematics degrees are in what? How many of you have mathematics degrees? You're able to skip that many steps and you're in Math 155? What I'm trying to say is some of you aren't ready for that. Some of you aren't ready to do that. You just have got out of pre-algebra and you just have started understanding what algebra is. Some of you didn't get out of pre-algebra understanding what algebra is. So don't be trying to do that. Some of you trying to. Don't. Okay? If you are coming out of pre-algebra and you are just now understanding what algebra is, you need to be doing this. Okay? So, what's left? Well, we went over. Let's take our handy dandy virtual eraser. Okay, we're going over. Got those steps out of the way. Then what's the only step left? The step that I'm going to test you on the most. If I want to take a big guess at it. Fractions. What do you mean fractions? Well, I'm fixing to show you. Let's start off with something simple. Got to crawl before you can what? Good. The rest of y'all, it's your parents' fault. You should have known that. 1/2 times x minus 3. Now let's make this a 5x. Because is equal to 1/2. No, let's just make it simple. 7.
Boy, if you don't stop erasing.
Okay, that's what an eraser's for.
Strumming,
Hmm.
strumming.
You have an eraser, don't you?
No.
Exactly.
I hate pencils.
Thank you very much. Bringing a pen to math is like saying ain't in English.
I do that.
You don't do it. All right. So, here you don't need to clear the fraction. You just distribute that fraction. Yeah, that way we get 5/2 x is equal to 3/2 x, or minus 3/2 x. And now not only do we have one fraction, we have what?
2.
2 fractions. So we went from normal to whips and chains.
Don't you multiply the fraction?
Okay? So don't do that. Whenever you have a fraction, the best thing to do is what? Keep it or get rid of it?
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Write that down. When a fraction is present, try to get rid. Some of y'all may not know what get rid means, but that means remove. Okay? Get rid of it. It's kind of like when you go to a hotel for a vacation. How many of you got kids? Okay, you know what I'm talking about here. You go on vacation, there's a 25-story hotel where you got 5 kids and you're going on vacation, so you know you don't take 5 little bags. You got to take their clothes, you got to take everything else. So do you go to the 25th floor? Do you ask for the 25th floor? Or do you ask for the first floor?
First,
Why?
get rid of
Because somebody has to carry all that paraphernalia. Usually it's the father. Okay? That has to be packed like a pack mule. And when you go to the beach, yeah. Guess who has to carry all the stuff?
Dad.
Yeah, exactly. So I want the first floor. I want to put it on one floor. So I don't want to get rid of the second floor here. There's 2 stories right there. I want to get rid of it. So multiply through by the common what? The common denominator. So I'm going to multiply through by 2 over 1. So I'm going to put a bracket here. I'm going to multiply by 2 over 1. Or 2, because 2 is the common denominator. Now I'm going to put a baby step in here because you have to remember to do this. So I'm going to put 2 over 1 here. No coughing, please. And 2 over 1 here. Why didn't I multiply by what's inside the parentheses? Your ring is in the concrete block. Why don't you just take your hand and just reach in there and get it?
That'd be another problem.
Huh?
Another problem.
What's going to happen if you try that? Break your hand. So, are you just saying we're just going to take that 2 and just force it into this concrete block right here? You can't do that. Just like you cannot reach into a concrete block with your hand and get the ring. You got to bust that up before you can do anything. So you leave it what? You leave it alone because you can't do anything with it. There you go. Now, I'm sorry, people, but to me, I don't see why that's hard. What is the number one problem students have with mathematics? Fractions. What happens if you put fractions into algebra? Students can't do the algebra with fractions. So what do? You make everybody use a calculator. Yep, and that's why you got people that can't make change. And that's why I refuse to do that. So what happens here?
Council.
That gives you a 1 equals what? 14. Now, at this point, the 1 in front of the, you don't need to worry about that, because 1 is what we call the multiplicative identity. Impress your friends. A positive 1 is the multiplicative identity, meaning that whatever you multiply by 1, you're going to get what? You're going to get the same answer. So, do you physically have to distribute that 1?
No.
No. It's just assumed, since 1 is the multiplicative identity, positive 1 multiplied by this. Now, to actually get rid of the parentheses, you have to distribute. But we don't, because 1 times this is that, so we don't do that. But just so you will understand, I'm going to distribute the 1 here and here. And that gets rid of the parentheses. And that gives me 5x minus 3 is equal to 14. And now you're back to a number 1, number 2 level problem. And how do you get rid of a negative 3? Take it across the river. Comes positive 3. 5x is equal to what? 17. And x is equal to 17 over 5. All right, let's step it up a notch. Is this a test question? Maybe. If I give you 20 questions on the test, you might get one of these. What kind of question are you going to get? Maybe one like this. All right, I'm going to let y'all work on that one for a second. If you can't do it, then you should get discouraged. And quit. What's the common denominator of 3 and 2? So you're going to multiply 3 by 6.
3 by 2.
What's 3 times 2? We have to go back to unit 1
I just say multiply it by 6 then.
because that's the common denominator. 6. What's the common denominator of 1/3 and 1/2? 6. So I'm going to multiply through by 6 over 1. put a baby step in here. So that's 6 over 1. I'm going to multiply by this 1/3. I'm going to multiply by this 1/2. And I'm going to multiply by this 4. And the students say, well, Hubert, I thought you said you couldn't multiply blah, 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 or something with the parentheses. And why are you multiplying by this 1/2? Well, you got a concrete block with a ring in it. Right here. Concrete block with a ring in it. And somebody drops a $10 bill right here. Are you just going to leave it alone because you can't reach into the concrete block? Or are you going to grab the $10 bill? Somebody drops a $10 bill beside your concrete block, you just going to leave it sitting there? No, all of you are going to pick it up. Don't say you're not. Oh, I'll wait till somebody comes by and pick it up. Yeah, right. Whatever. You're going to grab it. All right? So you can't get this X. So that has nothing to do with this $10 bill out there. This is not in the what? In the concrete block. So you multiply this by the 6. You got to multiply it here, you got to multiply it here, you got to multiply it here. And what is 6 divided by 3? And what is 6 divided by 2? And what is 6 times 4? Now, I don't know about y'all, but I would much rather work with this than work with this. Now you see why people can't do algebra. They can't do algebra because they don't know how to do fractions. So what does that 2 become? The hammer? And you get 2x what? Good. And what's negative 14 plus 3? Bring the 11 over. 35. And x is equal to 35 halves